like to turn to Psalm 13. And we want to thank the ladies for all the food. And again, we appreciate Velma, her faithfulness. I want to look at Psalm 13. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? Forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall mine enemy be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Lighten mine eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I'm moved. But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. I will sing unto the Lord, because he hath dealt bountifully with me. This is a Psalm of David. It is not one of the more familiar Psalms. We're not told the specific time or the place of the Psalm. But as you read the Psalm, it becomes obvious that it was a time of great personal distress and trial. And David, of course, had many such times in his life. As we've said many times, one of the amazing things about the Psalms is their practicality. For every human emotion and experience, there is a passage in the Psalms to teach us how to properly respond to such. And this 13th Psalm certainly is no exception. Like all the Psalms, there's much instruction. Find a lot of help here, and encouragement should be a source of strength and hope for the child of God. Throughout the Psalm, David is talking with God. So it's a prayer. And in this prayer, there is a distinct shift in David's manner and in his tone. And that marks a more important shift in his soul, in his heart. So David begins the psalm discouraged, distressed, but by the end of the psalm, verses 5 and 6, he's encouraged, he's excited. At the beginning of the psalm or prayer, there's impatience. 4 times he asks, how long? There's agitation. But when you get to the end, there's calm. At the beginning of the psalm, there's confusion. But by the end, there's contentment. At the beginning, there appears to be sorrow. But at the end, there's joy. At the beginning, there's complaint. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? How long? He's complaining to the Lord. But at the end of the psalm, he's thankful. At the beginning of the psalm, there appears to be some despair. But by the time you get to the end, there's praise. At the beginning of the psalm, he feels a distance from God. But at the end of the psalm, there's a felt closeness to the Lord. So again, this psalm is a prayer. And through prayer, David moves from depths to the heights of praise. And what we see here is that prayer changes us. True prayer changes us. Again, the entire psalm, David is talking to the Lord. And herein lies the answer to the dark days of the soul. Talk to the Lord. Talk to the Lord, because it will change you. Again, there is a sharp contrast in the soul of David between verses 1 and 2 and verses 5 and 6. All through it, David is praying. There's no indication that his circumstances changed, but there is every indication that he was changed. And you can pray and pray and pray, and your circumstances may not change. Your circumstances may get worse. But if we continue to pray, we'll change, and we'll be able to get through whatever it is. So David kept praying. Even though he felt that God had forgotten him, had forsaken him, he kept praying because he knew that the answer to the situation was God. There is no other answer. No need to look anywhere else. The answer is the Lord. And if we know that, then we continually go to Him. So keep in mind throughout this psalm that David is praying. And we need to keep praying relentlessly, intensely, fervently. So our subject this afternoon is praying through to joyful song. Praying through to joyful song. Verses 1 and 2, there was an honest expression of what David was feeling. The problem many times with our praying is that we come to God trying to act like somebody or trying to act like something and somebody that we're not. God knows. God knows our heart. And in real praying, we will be honest with God. Even if that means the expression of feelings that are not right. God knows. God knows. Don't be dishonest with the Lord. He knows. And it's very important that we have a sincere relationship with the Lord. But because of a misunderstanding of the character of God, many lack honesty in their praying. Do not be afraid to be honest with God. 4 times in verses 1 and 2, David asks, how long? How long? The repetition of these words are indicative of discouragement, can be indicative of certainly impatience on the part of David. The repetition of these words, how long, indicate a prolonged trial. It's as if David is saying, Lord, I've had enough. How long? It indicates that there was a prolonged time of distress and trouble, anxiety. The words "how long" are an indication of someone who's weary of their circumstances, and also a picture of a soul in search for answers. How long? Picture of a soul longing for relief. But notice what he says. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? These words reveal the feeling of David at this time. What was he feeling? He was feeling that God had forgotten him. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? He didn't pray, Lord, have you forgotten me? That's not what he said. He said, Lord, how long wilt thou forget me? It wasn't a question in David's mind. God had forgotten him in his mind. Now, to forget is something lost through neglect or inattention. He's accusing God of neglecting him. He's accusing God of not paying attention to him. Again, he did not say, Lord, have you forgotten me? But how long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? That's the expression, or it's the feeling that he has been mistreated by God. He is not being properly cared for by God, is what he's feeling. And he expresses it to God. I mean, if you feel it, God knows it. You can feel that way towards someone else and they don't know it. But God knows. God knows. So you might as well be honest with God. There's also here a feeling of self-pity. He feels forgotten. He's feeling sorry for himself. Now we know, Isaiah 49, verses 14 through 16, God doesn't forget. The bridegroom may forget. The mother may forget. God does not forget. God never forgets His people. But we sometimes forget that truth. We need to be honest. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord? And then David answers the question with another question. Forever? Forever? Again, he's basically saying, Lord, I've had enough. And that question, forever, is indicative, again, of despair. It's indicative of a feeling of hopelessness. This is what he's feeling. Notice also he says, how long wilt thou hide thy face from me? Again, it's not, Lord, are you hiding your face from me? But how long wilt thou hide thy face from me? Now, the face of God in Scripture is a manifestation of the bestowal of His blessings. He's saying, Lord, it's been so long since you've blessed me. Oh, how ignorant. By these words, we get a clear idea of David's feeling at this time. He's feeling that God has been withholding blessing from him. He sees nothing good in his present circumstances. He has lost sight of God's goodness to him. Have we ever done that? Most certainly. He's feeling all alone. He's feeling out of touch with the Lord. He's feeling desperation. Again, he's feeling out of touch with God. And he doesn't cast the blame upon himself. He casts the blame upon God. How long wilt thou forget me? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me? You may say, well, it's not right for David to feel that way. And that's very true. It's not. This isn't the first time that David's felt this way. Notice in Psalm 10, verse 1. Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thyself in times of trouble? Job 23 and verse 3 said, oh, that I knew where I might find him. Felt forsaken of God. And we've all felt this way at times. Is it right? No. No, it's not. But David was just being honest with God. Don't be afraid to be honest with God. He already knows. He already knows. It's like the parent that asks their child, did you do such and such? And you know good and well they did. You already know they did. You just want them to be honest. Notice also, how long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? He's saying, Lord, you don't give me any counsel. I've got to take counsel with myself. How long? Counsel here has reference to his thoughts, to his meditations. In other words, David has become a prisoner to his own thoughts. Oh, there's many times we become prisoners to our thoughts. There are many of God's people who are prisoners of their own thoughts. He says, how long shall I take counsel in my soul? Don't be afraid to tell God that you are a prisoner in your own thoughts, that your thoughts aren't right. The tense here indicates an ongoing action. The word soul indicates that this is more than an emotional and mental battle. It's a spiritual battle that David is in. There's also the word sorrow there, meaning grief or anguish. And then we see this was daily. This was daily. Then he asks, how long shall mine enemy be exalted over me? The word enemy indicates something that is against, something that is opposed to us, something that hinders. It's a hindering force. The word exalted means placed above. How long shall this hindering force be exalted or above me? So he feels that which was against him was, and seeking to hinder him, was winning the battle. And he asks, how long? How long, Lord, am I going to have to deal with this? David was feeling defeated. And he was telling God about it. And that's who we should tell. Don't lie to God. If you're feeling defeated, don't come to God like you're victorious, pretending to be something that you're not. He knows. Tell Him. Don't be afraid to be honest with God. So from these first two verses, we see the feeling of discouragement. We see the feeling of impatience, self-pity, despair, hopelessness, loneliness. I mean, it's pretty lonely when you feel you've been forsaken by God. There's a feeling of desperation, bondage to his own thoughts, and a sense of defeat. We all feel those things. We ought to be glad that the Lord addresses, that the Bible addresses those situations. Don't deny them. Well, I've never been discouraged. You're a liar. Everybody's been either that or you don't know what discouragement is, one of the two. We all have these feelings. We all go through these things. But the Bible addresses them. We know what we need to do in these situations. So we see his feelings. Verses 3 and 4, having these feelings, he beseeches the Lord. The heart of the psalm is found in verse 3. Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Lighten mine eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. So let's look at what David prays for here. There are three pleas in verse 3. Consider me, hear me, lighten mine eyes. The words are imperative, which indicates that his prayer is earnest, not just a passing, casual request. The word consider me. Again, he's already expressed, how long wilt thou forget me, Lord? And now he says, consider me, Lord. That means look at me. Lord, look at me. Inspect me. Look intently at me with care. Consider me. He's praying that the Lord would give him special care. Why? Is it because he's special? No. It's because that's what he's in need of, as indicated by what he's feeling in verses 1 and 2. If you feel that God has forgotten you, and you feel that God is withholding from you, and you're trapped in your own mind, guess what? You need special help. And you need help that comes from God. So this really is a prayer of one who feels their need and knows that only God can help them. So he prays, consider me. In the time of spiritual battle, in the time of discouragement, in the time of impatience, in the time of self-pity and despair and hopelessness and loneliness, we need to pray for God's special care. We're in need of his help at that time. Times when we're prisoners in our own thoughts. And our mind is turned against us. And that's what happens when you become a prisoner in your own thought. Basically, your mind has become your enemy. That's not uncommon. It happens all the time. You need to pray. You need to pray for God's special care. You don't need to deny those feelings. You need to pray for God's special care. And then notice the next thing. He says, hear me, O Lord my God. Hear me. That does not just mean listen, but it means to answer and to respond. Again, it is a prayer of someone who feels a great need. It is a prayer of urgency. It is a prayer that God would intervene in his life. That God would intervene, God would interrupt his life. David often prayed those words, "Hear me," throughout the Psalms. But notice what he says here. He says, "Hear me, O Lord." A little interjection, "O," speaks of a depth of feeling. O Lord. And notice it is, "O Lord, my God." There's a feeling of relationship with God. Then notice the next thing he prays for, "Lighten mine eyes." He feels the darkness and needs light. So that's what he's praying for. It's the same thing as praying, "Lord, open my eyes to see things as I ought to see them." If you and I feel that God has forgotten us, we're not seeing things right. We need to tell God that. And the answer is that God would give us light to cause us to see things as we ought to see them. He's been honest with God, expressing his feelings. And now he's pleading with God to cause him to see and to think correctly. To see and to think correctly. There is also a sense of danger and urgency. He says in verse 2, "Lest I sleep the sleep of death." Verse 4, "Lest mine enemies say." So he feels, being in this condition, I'm in great danger. If you believe that God has forgotten you, you're trapped in the thoughts of your own mind, you're in great danger. You're in great danger. And the psalmist realized this. He says, "Lest I sleep the sleep of death." He feels that if God does not move on his behalf, he will die. "Lord, you've got to help me," is what he's praying. Because if you don't, I'm going to die. I cannot go on this way. Again, this is honesty with God. And it expresses the desperateness of the situation. Paul felt this way when he said in 2 Corinthians 1:8, "For we would not, brethren, have you ignorant of our trouble, which came to us in Asia. We were pressed out of measure, above strength, insomuch that we despaired of life." It's an urgent situation. Paul was saying there, we went through things that are far beyond us, beyond our strength, and we thought we were going to die. And that's what David is expressing here as well. So his feelings were founded upon certain fears that were very real. Be honest enough to tell God your fears. He already knows. "Well, I shouldn't be afraid of such and such." Well, that's true. You shouldn't be. But you are. So tell God. Don't be dishonest with the Lord. And then notice the next thing. "Lest mine enemies say I've prevailed against him." He fears being defeated by the enemy. He was fearful of being overcome by the enemy. And then he says, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. The word trouble means to squeeze or cramp into a narrow or tight place. It's a feeling that the whole world is closing in from all sides. His fear was that he would waver. His fear was that he would slip. His fear was that his faith would be shaken. Don't be afraid to be honest with God. And then in verse 5 and 6, a transformation has taken place. Again, we see how David is feeling. And through it all, David prays. He's still talking with God. Even if you feel God has forgotten you, you pray anyway. You keep on praying. You don't stop. David, having been honest with God, he pleaded with the Lord, verses 3 and 4. And then coming to verse 5, his focus and his feelings have changed. But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation. I will sing unto the Lord, because he hath dealt bountifully with me. Coming to verse 5, his outlook has changed. I don't know that his circumstances have changed at all. What was causing these feelings, I don't know if any of that has changed. But his outlook has changed. And I believe the reason is because he kept praying. Prayer will change your outlook. His entire tone has changed. In times of discouragement, in times of impatience and self-pity and despair and hopelessness and loneliness, our feelings need to change. Our feelings need to change. When we become a prisoner of our own thoughts, we need to change. When we're defeated, we need to change. Our feelings need to change. And how do we do that? You keep talking to God, and you'll change. Guaranteed. You will change. Notice verse 5. But, that is, in spite of everything else, I have trusted in thy mercy. Meaning, I have taken refuge in your mercy. He had fled to God for mercy. Mercy is not getting what we deserve. When you and I are so ignorant that we feel we've been forgotten and mistreated by God, we need mercy. That God wouldn't give us what those feelings deserve. He took refuge in the mercy of God. He kept praying. When his feelings weren't right, he kept praying. Someone may say, well, my feelings are right, I don't feel like praying. You pray anyway. You just keep on praying. You just keep on talking with God. That'll change you. That'll change you. He trusted. And then notice what it says. My heart shall rejoice. Quite a change from verses 1 and 2. In thy salvation. He kept praying. And there was rejoicing in heart. Keep praying. Notice verse 6. I will sing unto the Lord. The Hebrew word for sing there means to turn about or to travel. Conveys the idea of one who sings everywhere they go. He said, I will sing unto the Lord. A joyful song regardless of circumstances. Keep praying. Quite a change from verses 1 and 2. Notice also verse 6. Because he hath dealt bountifully with me. What a change from verses 1 and 2. He hath dealt bountifully with me. He's gone from how long wilt thou forget me to he hath dealt bountifully with me. He now sees God's blessings and God's hand upon his life. And how did he get there? He just kept talking to God. He just kept praying. Again, quite a change from verses 1 and 2. So as you read verse 5 and 6, notice the focus of David. Thy mercy, thy salvation, unto the Lord, he hath. Quite a change from how long wilt thou forget me, O Lord. So as we've already stated, the psalm starts with David in sorrow. It ends with David in song. And how did he get there? He's talking to God. He talked with God through it all. It started with David feeling forgotten of the Lord. And it ends with David feeling bountifully blessed of the Lord. The way that David got from verses 1 and 2 to verses 5 and 6 was honesty with God in prayer and seeking what he needed from God. He needed God's help. So that's what he sought. Be honest with God. Plead with him concerning your need. And anytime we have these feelings that David had, we are in great need. And only God can help us. So this is the way to a life of song. Pray. Keep on praying. Well, he's not hearing me. Keep on praying. Keep on praying. I've been doing it for a long time. He's not hearing me. Keep on praying. You just keep on. And it'll change you. It'll change you. Which in turn means that you draw closer to God. And pretty soon, those feelings of discouragement, they're gone. They're gone. I've dealt with a lot of depressed people, discouraged people, and you tell them, you need to pray. Most of the time, they're going to get mad. That's not what I need to do. You're dismissing my feelings. No, that's not what I'm doing. That's what you need to do. You need to pray. Because it'll change you. It'll bring you out of the depths. You just need to keep praying. Well, nothing's happening. Keep praying until it does. That's how we're to live our lives. And I believe that's how we become victorious. That's how we prevent becoming prisoners to our own thoughts. It's amazing how people so easily become trapped in their own thought process. Pretty soon your thoughts are facts. They become reality. May not have anything to do with reality, but they become your reality. You're in trouble when that happens. And you need God. And you need to just keep praying for the Lord to deliver you from those situations. So the way to get to a life of song is pray. Just keep on praying. Don't stop. Don't stop. Brother Dave, if you'd come and lead us in verse song. Let's all stand. Dave will lead us